Hello, this is Arnel Tanyag with Tanyag Company. I'm doing my video for this week on the common challenges of successors of family-owned or privately owned businesses that have to grow and scale. And so a successor could be, you could have a founder who is a mother and father, a father and mother, or a combination of both. They bring their kids in. It could be their kids, their cousins, their nephews. It's, they bring successors are family related by blood, or a successor could be a key employee who is taking over the position. It could be one person, two people. I think it's even more difficulty when you have multiple successors or multiple family members. So we're going to talk some common challenges for successors of family-owned business and privately owned businesses to grow and scale. That's one of the areas that I work with a lot is successors. A family-owned business could be one successor. It could be a combination of three or four. I mean, my current client I work with is about a $10 million company that has four successors now own the business for about 4 years. Two of them are brothers, and the other one is brother and sister. And those two groups are cousins. And then I have a successor right now who's taking over a professional service firm. He's not family related. So it's these are some common problems that I work with. And the thing I love working with successors, that's amazing that they have no other choice but to grow that business to scale. They have to pay down that loan or that debt, and they really have to grow it in a way that provides the ideal lifestyle for themselves, employees, and the growth of the business. So one of the biggest challenges that I see in family businesses, and I'll tell you number one, is the founder still makes the final call. You don't even have a successor. You have a backup operator. Especially in a lot of family-owned businesses, it's interesting. I've talked to people who they say they're successors. They're not really successors. The founder's still there. It could be the parent, the person who founded the business. It could be the third or fourth generation, and then the successor could be a key employee or one of the kids. And they're still making the final call. I mean, you're just you're a backup operator, or you're really just doing a lot of the work that you believe you're the successor, but you're not. And the number of reasons second generation stall is because they still defer to the founder. There's really no definite successor. There's a successor by, not even by title, it's by hearsay. And the biggest challenge is it's people believe it's a shared authority, but it's really not. It causes great confusion. You don't know who to believe. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know what you can say or do. Then the other people who are not successors, the key stakeholders or people on the team, they're watching behaviors. They don't know. The titles don't really mean anything. But the bottom line, the founder still makes a decision, and the successor never fully steps in. And here's the biggest challenge I see with a lot of successors is they're successors by their belief. Their founder could be their father, their mother, or the owner of the company saying, hey, you're going to be the successor, but what does that really mean? And then they say, well, in their mind, they imagine, well, I'm going to be the one in charge. I'm going to be a leader. But no, you're not. By default, it goes back to the founder. It goes back to the person in charge. It isn't you, because you may be capable, but there's no clarity on who really is leading, who really makes the final decision, and then who really is leading or making, not only leading, but making the final decision, or who do people go to? And the secret is clarity beats capacity. You got to know who's leading. So, I have some successors I talk to and say, oh, I'm a success, I'm a leader. Well, are you really or not? Oh, the succession plan will take 3 or 4 years. I always tell people, look, what founders are really looking for, at the end of the day, they're still the final authority, but they're looking for you to step up. They're looking for you to lead. And if you don't know how to do that, you got to get some help. You're going to have to prove, even to your partners and even to yourself and even to the founders, that you can do that. Because if you don't, then you're not going to be a successor. And I just saw a local company where I was talking to a gentleman who was going to be a successor. He's like, what's happening? And the I think it was the third generation sold it to a bigger firm, and the two potential successors, and not successors now, they're just working for that company that the father sold the business to, and they're taking it over. So my question, if you're stepping into ownership, right, you got to define the decision rights. You really need to decide, you know, do I want to be an owner, not just a successor? And then I need to define decision rights. And that usually means you have to, number one, prove that you can do that. And there's ways to do that. And number two, you got to be comfortable having those conversations with the founders. And number three, you got to be comfortable in leaving the company that you might have been told you're taking over, but is never going to pass, And then the other thing I tell successors, why are you building something for the future you have to pay for when you should be building the business to transition and succeed to you so that it can pass on to you and you can be building for your future while you're still building for the future of the founder. It could be family member or not, but why do you wait while you can really have a conversation now? So if you're stepping in ownership, you got to define those decision rights immediately. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to me and give me a call. I always will sit down with people and hear the story and see if it's the right thing to do. If it isn't, then we move on. The other challenge I see, there's a talent mismatch with people who've already been there, and there's a growth team. So, when a founder builds a company, they have people who help them get there, but it may not be the reason. It may not be the reason that they may not be the reason that they think that they may not get where they want to, because what you find out is most people you start with a company doesn't grow with you, especially with successors. When somebody takes over a business as successor, some of the people they've been with them are not able to adapt to the new successors. And here's the interesting thing. Loyalty is not the same as capability. People think, I've been loyal for like 10, 15 years. I'm going to give them this position. And I'm like, are they capable? He's like, what do you mean are they capable? Are they capable of doing this? I mean, I know a family-owned business right now, and the founder is like, I want my son to take it over. And I said, well, is he capable? He's like, what do you mean? Does he want it? Does he show interest? No, I don't know, Arnel, but I'm going to give it to him. I'm like, are you sure? Because, you can hurt yourself and the business and the people who rely on this business for success by giving them this position because they've been loyal. Loyalty doesn't, basically result in capability. So the difference, what you have to do is you have to look at breaking down the difference between builders and scalers, or people who just really just want to be an employee and don't really want to be an impact player or a multiplier, who really wants to grow the business. And so what you find out, there's a disconnect between legacy, like there's been people been there 10, 20, 30 years when they started, and then growth team, where are they going to grow, right? And that's the biggest challenge is, when I hear legacy, I hear teams talk about we're protecting the past. When I hear growth teams, I'm looking, we're gonna grow. We need to increase our capacity, and it's really a new type of capacity because you're going to do things differently. Like I have a couple clients that want to go from 10 million to 25 million, and they having to develop the new capacity to really get into the C-suites to grow that business. Because here's the interesting thing, if you don't upgrade your team as a successor, the business won't upgrade itself. And then most important thing, what I tell successors, you got to upgrade your mindset, right? You got to be a positive mindset. You got to lead the growth mindset. You got to upgrade your story. You got to see yourself running a $25 million company, having a leadership team. The other thing you got to do is you got to have the right strategies going to help there. But most importantly, you got to have the right advisors that actually know you, know your business, can speak the truth to you, can be I call it an consultant to really help you make those decisions. And when you're in this position of looking at talent in terms of, do I keep legacy versus growth team? What you really need to do is you just need to audit your team, right? audit your team and see, what do I keep? What do I change? Who do I coach? Who do I let go? And there's no middle ground. I mean, I was listening to a podcast where the successor took over the business from their father, and only one out of the 25 original employees was able to stay with them, just because that employee kept wanting to grow. All the other ones didn't want to grow. They didn't want to learn any new skills. They had a certain level of capacity. And capacity basically means their ability to think and behave in that role. They're not able to adapt, or they're not as talented, or honestly, it didn't serve the business. So they either had to find another seat for them in the company, or they decided to let them go, or the person decided, wasn't a good fit. But when you're at this point of evaluating a legacy team versus a growth team, there's no middle ground. You got to pick and choose. Because if not, the successors I work with, they're building a new team. They're building a team that buys into the vision. They're building a team that understands the strategies. They're building the team that understands the priorities. I mean, they're auditing the people. I mean, I have a client right now, we talk about that. We're auditing processes and people and see what's the next thing for him. And, he actually brought in a key executive on his leadership team, and he's ecstatic. And I was like, yeah, I'm ecstatic for you, because you need to build a team if you want to get to that, 10 to 15, 20 million mark. And he agreed. One of the other biggest challenges I see is most successors have a lack of strategic clarity. What that means is most successors don't fail. They just stay busy doing the wrong things. Oh my God, that is so correct. I mean, it's interesting. People say, I'm a successor. And you're like, okay, well, are you official, unofficial? Then what are you doing? So they stay busy doing the wrong things, and the wrong things that they're doing, they're not leading. They're like having one foot in post to be the successor and then one foot as an employee. So they're really not leading. They think they're leading. I mean, they're not driving growth. They're kind of managing. Well, not even managing. They're kind of just thinking. They're just moving on and on. And here's the biggest thing is, and I saw a successor, I was talking to one recently in the last year. I said, well, what's your strategic plan? What is your strategic plan for the business? Oh, we have one. No, what's yours? Not what the business is. What's your strategic plan for the business? What's your 3 to 5 year mark, 3 to 5 year strategic plan in the business? Can you describe that to me in 60 seconds or less, right? How do I see the business growing? And he goes, no, our company has, no. I said, see, he's not acting like a leader. He's acting like an employee, or even worse, he's got one step thinking he's a successor and going to lead the company, and he has 1 foot I'm just going to go with the flow. So there's no strategic clarity. And if you don't have strategic clarity, what happens is you inherit a business that basically runs on momentum, but no direction, right? It's got some momentum because it's either two things: the founder's still growing it, or they're not going backwards. So there's still a little bit of momentum there, but there's no direction. And without a clear strategy, every department pulls differently, and they pull differently. Like I do strategic planning, and when you do strategic planning, you align everyone in the management executive team, everyone who's in certain departments, marketing, operations, business development, and administration. You align them all together to pull to a certain strategic goal, priorities, and strategies. And without that, when you're a successor and you don't have your own strategic plan or your strategic clarity, you have activity without direction is just an expensive noise. So it's really just noise. I mean, who wants to be a successor and you don't really have the right activity? You're doing the wrong things without any direction. And really, you need to be directed. Like one of my best clients said that, Arnel, I don't think we can ever get to 10 to 12 million until we get some outside help, because I don't know what I don't know. So I need to always be leveling up the business, and built this strategic plan. So they have a fractional CEO that's helped them build a plan to 25 million. And my role is to help the key executives basically keep themselves positive and really self-develop them into a way that they can lead that 20 to 25 million company if they choose to. If they're not, what's next? So, I really believe if you don't have absolute clarity, you have activity without direction, and it's just expensive noise. And if you keep doing that, I'm telling you, it's going to be painful. And then here's the other thing too. If you really want to be successful as a successor, you need to build a 3 to 5 year narrative. Really, what is your plan? How do you see the business growing you're leading? Not just a to-do list. And if you have partners, I tell you, I have a company in New York, has 4 partners, and each of the partners chose one person as a leader because he was really addressing growth. He was giving the vision. He was pushing it, pulling people to it, bringing the resources, and he brought the 3 to 5 year vision. The company always stayed in 3 to 5 million range. Last year they're at 9. Their goal this year is to break 12. They want to do 25 million in about 3 to 5 years. And man, this person is driving change. So he's driving change with strategic clarity. Number 4 challenge I see is, and this is interesting too, they haven't identified the leadership transition gap. When you are growing a company as a successor, there's a leadership gap. You can't run a company like a manager or even as an employee if you're supposed to lead like an owner. I tell you, you cannot run a company like a manager or even as an employee if you're supposed to lead like an owner. And most successors really at the mercy of the founder. They have great ideas, but they still majority act like an employee or sometimes a manager or a salesperson, but not like an owner. I believe the hardest promotion in a business when you have successor is going from operator to owner, right? And if you're growing a company to C-suite, I think it's even harder for going from operator to owner to C-suite, executive. That's even harder. The key is that you have to take the internal shift matters more than the external role. You have to work on yourself. You have to self-develop. Confidence, decision-making, pressure to find leadership, situation awareness. That's not tenure. That is learning through proper frameworks, models, understanding your personality, strengths and weaknesses, how to give yourself space. I mean, most people, the biggest challenge when they identify a leadership transition gap, most successors think they're fine. I said, no, that's a different level of leading yourself and leading other people. I mean, I spend most of the time with my clients in the business owner's transition to C-suite is communication, how to communicate to partners, how to coach them, how to create protocols, how to ask questions, how to talk stuff out of their heads so they could focus on that one thing, that one domino that drives everything else. I mean, when you are a successor, there is a leadership and identify a leadership transition gap. And that's really about what are your weaknesses? What are your blind spots? What are you doing to lead? And it's interesting. I mean, if you're not working with an executive coach or an advisor, someone like that, you don't know your blind spots. You don't know what lack of confidence, decision-making. You're just going with emotion. You're acting like an employee. And then you want to be successor. Man, I would hate to be in a position of a business where I'm a successor and we're at, 8 or 9 million and I need to grow this thing to 2025, provide the money and lifestyle. And I have no clue. And I don't know my strengths or weaknesses, my blind spots. Man, you're leading to a disaster. So the biggest thing, if you as a successor need to start thinking like an owner before you feel ready. And one of the best ways to do that is to first have the belief. And if you're not sure what that looks like, go get the resources. There are great resources like coaches like me that will help you not only think like an owner before you're ready, but start living like an owner. Start taking ownership of a successor. Because I see a lot of people say I'm a successor. Well, so how do you take an ownership? What do you mean? How do you take an ownership? How do you self-develop in yourself? What do you mean self-development? How do you making sure you have better? How are you making yourself as a leader? Who's your advisors? Who do you talk to about what's going on in the business? Who do you get information to? Who knows you really well, knows your strengths, weaknesses, knows your goals, know your family, your kids, know what's important to you. Who knows that? How's that working? I mean, who's challenging you like that? I mean, you got to start thinking like an owner, or you're going to be the bottleneck. You're going to be the leadership gap. You're going to be not even the gap. You're going to be the problem. And so, I mean, if you already know you're a successor, you got to start thinking, I'm the leadership gap. If I don't start thinking like an owner before I feel ready, I need to find the resources. I need to get people to help me speed that up. Number 5, the biggest challenge I see is governance and role ambiguity. So basically means is there's a governance is who makes those decisions, and then what is your role? I mean, when you own a family-owned business or a privately-owned business, and I see this all the time because I help clients hire people, they don't have a role profile, the 20% is important, 80%, they don't have a 30, 60, 90 day, and they don't really know how to hold that person accountable. And I'll tell you what, when you can't hold somebody accountable for their role, it is really hard. So the biggest challenge is there's no accountability. Everyone has a say. In a family-owned business or a privately held business is who really makes the decision, but not only about that, how do you hold somebody accountable? It's interesting. Most family businesses don't have a strategy plan. They have a structure problem. Basically means is who is responsible for that department? Who is the leader? Because they have been vetted and they have been promoted to that role. They're under a high level of accountability. They're being coached, or they have a supervisor or a manager. Who's holding them accountable? Who helps them make the decisions, right? Because if you're, one of the things about successors, like if you want to grow the business, you got to define the role, who's the manager, who's the supervisor, what's your top 20%. It's not a strategy problem, it's a structure problem. It's they say clarity, it's not motivation becomes easier if you have clarity on the role and what that person specifically is doing. So a lot of times you have to explain the decision rights, meeting structure, role clarity. If you don't have the proper systems in this, it collapses. Like I was working with a client recently, and we're building out their EOS. I think it's like EOS 4-week tracker and all that. So we're talking through what they have to do a week, what to do quarterly rocks, what they have to do tracking. So they want everyone to be held accountable for their actual role. What's the top 20%? So I've been working with some of the key leaders and helping them build it out, because what happens is structure creates speed, chaos creates delay. Let me say that again. Structure creates speed, chaos creates delay. So when you are a successor, you really need to figure out what is the governance and role ambiguity, especially if you're going to hire new people. You got to have that, or you're just going to create a bunch of chaos. Structure creates speed, it creates clarity, and it creates momentum. It creates excitement. Chaos creates delay, and then people now they have quiet quitting, or they stay really busy and they're not productive. So you got to, as a successor, you got to define who decides, who advises, and who executes. You really have to answer that question. So if you're not really sure of who decides, who advises, who executes as a successor, like get some help. Talk to a business coach like me. Talk to other executive coaches that work with small businesses or works with businesses in the middle market. Because I tell you what, if you don't know who people don't know who to go to, or you don't know who to report to, or you don't know who's on your team, it will just lead to a crash and burn. So the other challenge I see is financial discipline and capital strategy. I mean, it's amazing that when you are a successor, the number one thing is the language of business is numbers. You really need to know your financial management. You need to know. Now, do you need to be an expert like a CPA, a fractional, CFO? No. I mean, great if you had a finance degree, or if you had an MBA in finance, or you knew your numbers. But you really need to be having a great CPA, sometimes a fractional CFO to look at your numbers, explain it, have monthly closeouts. Because here's the thing: when you're a successor, your company will grow and scale if you have financial discipline and capital strategy. Because it's interesting, revenue hides problems, cash flows expose them. Some of my best clients have great cash flow. They have processes, systems. They close out monthly. They know what the money's going in. They know what's what jobs are making money. Because if you just focus revenue, and you don't know your cash flow, or you don't know what's profitable jobs, or what's making your money not, or what's not, or what's losing your money, or not making the adjustments, revenue is good, but it's not as good if you don't have financial discipline and you know how your cash flow grows. Because I see a lot of companies they have great revenue, but when you ask them, what's your P&L, what's your balance statement, what's your balance sheet, what's your cash flow statement, like, I don't know any of that stuff. So what I've seen and heard and experienced with other people can grow broke, and you can have high revenue, you can end up growing, but you can be growing broke, it's still going broke. So it's funny, like, people are like, what does that mean? You can have high revenue and you have very little money in the bank, you're spending money left and right, you're going broke, and it's still going broke. That basically means is that your revenue may be good, but it's really it's really hiding problems, and you don't really have good cash flow because you don't have financial discipline. The key here as a successor, you need to have people on staff or teach you this, or you learn it, but have somebody go over with you and make sure they ask the right questions, teach you the difference between profit, cash, capital allocation. I mean, the secret of scaling, I've seen people who are really good at this. They have a fractional CEO, and scaling requires disciplined investment, not reactive spending. You put money away knowing when you can use it at certain times. So, as a successor, you really need to know the difference between profit and cash capital. You really need to know how your cash works, your cash flow. Because if you don't control your cash, your growth will control you. I've seen a lot of small business owners live off, let me get more sales because I get more cash. Well, are you managing cash? Or, I just gotta make sure there's stuff in the bank. Like, okay, well, what's your numbers? What does it look like? What's your expenses? Do you have a monthly closeout, right? Because if you don't control your cash, and if you don't control your cash, your growth will control you, and which means there's two things happen. You're going to end up doing a lot of work, making little no money, number one. Number two, you're always on the treadmill. Number three, you're going to be mentally exhausted and tired, and you're going to lead to quiet desperation. What I believe is you need to know your numbers weekly, not quarterly. You need to know what makes money weekly. You got to have a great CPA. You got to have somebody help you close out, read books, take knowledge, or at least have a resource that you can count on. But you really need to work on that because that will help you grow and scale, especially a successor. Number 7 challenge is that most successors may or may not know that the customer or the market has changed. So a lot of things every year things are changing in the world. So your best customers today could be your biggest risk tomorrow. I mean, I see that. What build businesses won't scale the business. So it's true. I have a company in New York where they built their business off working on buildings and high rises, but they looked at that and it hit a certain certain level where they felt that if they had to grow that part of the business, it would be more capital intensive and just didn't make logical sense. So they figured out 2 lines of services that were more profitable, more in alignment with what they wanted to do. So they realized to scale the business, they had to offer another lines of services that I really believe would be bulletproof. So what they did is, I truly believe your best customers today can be your biggest risk tomorrow, because not all your customers are the right clients for the future. So a lot of times what you have to do is you have to look at, what can I build? So an interesting thing, markets are evolving, especially with AI. I mean, AI is changing the game. Some businesses will actually not be as affected as much on AI because they still need people out there, but a lot of businesses will be affected by AI. So markets are evolving. So if you're over-reliant on legacy clients and services that create stagnation, that's going to be a problem. So what you want to do is you basically don't want to be focusing on legacy clients or clients that you may keep them, and you're looking for other clients that will be more bulletproof. And interesting, and the markets are constantly changing. So if the markets changes, you don't, your competitors will. I mean, you you got to change with the markets. You got to focus on where you think you can get ahead, not keep trying to bring up the same old clients that you realize it's not going to be profitable and your competitors will win. So one of the things they recommend is that, I believe this is you reevaluate your top 20% of your customers every year. So I know this year I rolled out a service helping people hire off Indeed or ZipRecruiter. I'm not a recruiter, so what we do is we work with them, help them build out the ad, help them build out the hiring process, pre-hiring process, and get them 2 or 3 people to interview. We do testing, interviews, questions, and then what they end up doing is they get a better position. So I don't go out and recruit the people. Usually you can find good people from ZipRecruiter, Indeed, and there's another one called Hireline, or just through word of mouth, or even if you're in the trades, what's they call that website that I can't remember, but there's a local website. You can find good people. You just need to have a process. So if you don't, then how do you stay objective? So one of the things what we recommend when you're working with your existing clients, looking at your markets and looking at your customer markets, and there's a ton of blind spots. And what you really want to do is you really want to focus on reevaluating your top 20% of your customers every year. I mean, you want to look at which customers make you the most profitable, right? And stay with them and look at the trends like, okay, is it something I need to eventually replace? I remember I was at an ACG event and they basically said that XXIG had done a lot of business with the state, with the Virginia Department of Transportation, but they realized the type of work that wasn't profitable for the business, and they pivoted to doing the same type of work for utility companies, which takes 10 years to get into a utility company. As long as you don't mess it up, you'll keep that relationship. And that's what they've done. They built their whole business off utility companies across the U.S. and they're number 2 in the category, because what they did is they realized the scale. They had to reevaluate their customer base. They had to see where their market was going. They had to reevaluate the top 20%. The other big challenges I see with Successors is what systems and processes that's a debt. So what do they have? What do they don't have? So one of the times when I see companies, a lot of their system processes are people, the legacy people. So if your business depends on people remembering things, it's not scalable, which is 100% true. Sometimes in businesses, even up to 1 to 10 million, there's people in certain roles that intellectually have institutional knowledge, and that information is not in some type of workflow, playbook, process map. It's not in like a depository, and that business depends on those people. When they're not there, the business can maintain a little bit, can maintain for a while, but they can't grow. And if the person's out for a long time, they're stuck. I mean, you can find out that when people are processes and they're not there, or they're not in the right mood, chaos feels productive until you try to grow. So I believe that the biggest challenge when your system and process, that it's you're held hostage to people who own intellectual knowledges of process systems, that it's not mind dumped into some type of playbook or depository that somebody can learn and train. And then it just creates chaos, especially when you got to grow. And here's the interesting thing is most small businesses, when they start out, they build this, I think, process of tribal knowledge. Somebody in a room knows somebody, we can get that, and there's no process and systems. And like one of the clients that I worked with in New York, we refer them to Process Street. So now what they do is they take all the information in their operations and put it in Process Street. And for them to eventually, for people to follow, they have to click Process Street before they move on to the next step. It's actually helped them hold people accountable. It makes that specific process in those specific roles for production scalable. It can be, now they can grow people and scale that, because it doesn't require people. It requires people to follow the Process Street. It's interesting. scaling requires repeatability and visibility. People have to see it and have to follow it. It's interesting. Everyone has everyone has a high level ambition, but you fall to the level of your systems. And so you can't grow a business or grow you if you don't have systems. You can be ambitious, you can be courageous, you can feel like I can do that, but you got to have systems. And systems are not people. They can be technology. There's a lot of great technology that can help you build systems. The key is for process system debt, you really got to document what works for you and then focus on growing it. Now, if you don't know what to document and you're having challenges, like, reach out to me. That's one of the things that I work with a lot of my clients. It's documenting what works, documenting what that doesn't work, and to get rid of it. And if it works really well, how can you create a workflow process map that somebody else can follow, right? So, and now there's software that you can pay money for that actually will create processes. You take your process, you put it in there, and then copy and paste it. It's phenomenal. If you do that, man, you don't be held to anyone in the business because your processes are documented. The last challenge I see with most successors is, especially if it's family or they've been around in the business but not family, is that family dynamics or emotional complexity. It's that dynamics of family or key people, and especially family emotional complexity. So here's the interesting thing. If you're in a family business, family issues don't stay home. They show up in your business. If you have a difficult, terrible life at home, it's going to show up in your business. And if it's family, it's even worse, and vice versa. The hardest conversations are the most expensive ones to avoid, especially in family-owned businesses. I mean, one of the biggest challenges is that, if you have family issues at home, it's going to spill out in the business, and then people avoid having this conversation. It's very, very costly. I mean, I work with a couple of family-owned businesses, and if you don't get ahead of it, it's more costly toward the end, and it can break up legacies of family and causes divide. The key is that what you want to do is you want to have any unspoken expectation, emotional ties create hidden friction that blocks decisions. You got to get those unspoken expectations and emotional ties talked out in the business sooner than later, so everybody gets on the same page. They may not always, they can agree to the decision. They may not like it, but they understand that the greatest good or the big picture. And I think the biggest challenge in family-owned businesses, especially family-owned businesses, is that it's hard to separate family, which is personal, and professional. The biggest thing I figure out in family-owned businesses or successors who work in the business who've been there for a while, most people, you can't avoid conflict. It doesn't protect the business, it weakens it. So a lot of the successors I work with, what we do is we help them address the conflict in a positive way so they can get ahead of it, versus it weakens the business and it weakens their role and then it weakens their ability to really be a successor. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be challenges. You got to get ahead of it. You got to address it in the way that makes sense for the founder and the leadership, and also for you. The biggest challenge is you got to separate family conversations from business decisions. I think, especially in family-owned businesses, that there's a very gray line, and sometimes you have to have an outside person help you figure out what that's a family thing versus a business thing. But in the years I've been coaching family-owned business, it's amazing how that line is so blur. And then what you really have to do is and I always tell this, when you're having these challenges in a family business and dynamics, and you have the number one thing that you have to bring a third party. I have a company in New York that has me work with a couple of their C-suite positions just to when they three can't communicate, I come in a room, help them communicate. Because at the end of the day, they're all saying, they all have they're saying the right things, but they can't get it to agree to the one thing, meaning that they all believe the outcome is the same that they want. They just have a hard time communicating. And then they get emotionally triggered because if they're not positively intelligent and not calm, the stories of the past, the stories of the day, the stories of the moment that will end up being their way how they make a decision. So the secret of that is to focus on making sure that, not to avoid conflict, doesn't protect the business, it weakens it. It means that you need to really talk it out and get on it, because people can know when you're holding stuff back. They know when you're not engaged. So I hope this video was very helpful for you. These are the 9 challenges successors have in growing and scaling a business. Because one of the things I do is work with successors. So if any of these challenges resonate with you, don't hesitate to reach out. One of the things I like to do is hear people's story and go from there. Thanks for watching.